Hey, what's up, everyone? Thanks for joining me for Real Talk NFT. As you know, I'm your host, Brian. You know, my brilliant co-host, Joe. And we have Arie Trouw on today, who's the co-founder of XYO Network. They're introducing a new NFT analyst tool. We're really excited to have him on, learn all about it. Arie, how you doing today?
Great, thanks. How are you, Brian?
Hey, I'm doing great. So why don't we just dive right into it? Give us a little breakdown about yourself and maybe a touch base about XYO and just the entire macro of the company.
Well, so I have a pretty long background in being an entrepreneur, and I got into the blockchain space almost a decade ago now because I got really fascinated by this new space, and it's really an interesting world. Obviously, as you guys are aware of if you're in NFTs or any of the Web3 technologies out there. One of the things that we found with XYO was that we prefer sovereignty of data and sovereignty of functionality over shared ledgers. Shared ledgers are great for money and for payments and for Bitcoin, but when it starts becoming a thing for processing data or analyzing data, it becomes very prohibitive as far as performance and cost goes very quickly. So our blockchain project is structured very differently, and so we look at everything through a lens of sovereignty, and that's one of the reasons why we did this NFT analysis tool, because it both demonstrates how XYO works, and also it really analyzes the sovereignty of the NFTs that are on there, and shows some of the side effects of bad sovereignty behavior.
Just to follow up, give me a little breakdown of your journey in the Web3 space. You've been in for a decade now. So what are some things that what got you into the space, 10 years ago, and why are you here now?
Well, I think for everybody, for the most part out there, the thing which got them interested and excited about it was the Bitcoin white paper. It's legendary and historically significant at this point. It also is very concise and easy to understand. It took me a little while to actually internalize it and come up with something to do. I think it was 2018 when I started actually working on XYO and a blockchain project there. So it took a little while, for most people, for it to kind of bubble there. But I was really fascinated by it. But then we were working a lot of location services in my company at the time. So our first wave at the XYO thing was the location oracle aspect of it, which turns out to be very fascinating, but also turns out to be just a portion of what we can do with XYO. And so we've really, with XYO 2.0, we've expanded what we want to do with XYO to being much more of a sovereign data platform as opposed to just a location oracle.
Nice. So give me a little breakdown about the NFT analysis tool. Like, how's that intertwined with XYO, and just give us a full breakdown of the whole tool.
So one of the things that's interesting about the tool is we wrote it the way that we want to write dApps, as both an exercise for ourselves to dog food our technology and to demonstrate it. So when you run the tool in your browser, what happens is we actually set up and start a XYO node in the browser for you. And when that node runs, we store our data locally in IndexedDB database on your browser. So it's basically a full-on app that's running in your browser there. Well, you can load some data from our archivists, and you can connect to our services if you want to, and do that. The one thing which is a little bit more difficult right now to do is to get some of the data, and I'll go into that a little bit with the red screen of death issues that we've seen. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, or what the red screen of death is. So some of those things you can't do from the client for various reasons. But you're running a full node in the browser, and then you go and either get data from our shared archivists, where if somebody else has already analyzed NFT or a collection, you can go and use that data as opposed to having to go reanalyze it and repull it yourself. So it has the balance between I can go ahead and do everything myself, and also I can lean on existing data that somebody else has and has signed, so I know that it's actually valid. It loads in there and then shows you that data. We have little data buttons on most of the cards in the app, so you can see what it is that's stored in XYO that is reflected in the UI. So you can see when we analyzed it, this is what we came up with. And some of the problems we see with NFTs are either potentially broken images or metadata, or improperly supported interfaces, like it's a 1155 or a 721, and the interfaces aren't properly supported. Upgradable contracts, I think, is a big problem. People kind of like the upgradable contracts because well, you can go fix things. Like sometimes people want to move it from one chain to the other chain or whatever it is, but that also means that it's not sovereign and it's controlled by a central entity. So we actually think we've personally frowned on upgradable contracts for NFTs or most contracts out there because it decentralizes a thing for you, because now you have one person who's sitting there with a button that can actually affect everybody. So we look at things like that. We look at the red screen of death is actually an interesting one where an image could still be around, but if Google and some of those antivirus companies that they lean on to get databases, if they decided that an IPFS file or a website domain is something which is inappropriate, by whatever standards they have, they flag that as something which is dangerous. And in some of the cases, it makes sense. Like say, for example, it was a scam where a person made an NFT which looks like a Bitcoin, and you think you're buying a Bitcoin, but you're actually just buying some NFT a person made. It is a scam, and we probably should be able to alert that somehow. But what happens is if we even put a link on our site to that image that the person has there, they'll switch the browser to what I call a red screen of death, which says that there's a potentially dangerous content on this page, basically making our page look like it's dangerous as opposed to the page that the link is to. So to be able to actually pull an image from, or if you make a call to that image, you can't do it either. So we can't even pull that image and make a thumbnail out of it client side. We have to do it server side to be able to get that. So that's another issue with a lot of NFTs out there, that they've been shadow banned basically by Google because their images are now on the don't show list, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I actually come from the domain world, believe it or not, spent 11 years there, and a small change in a subdomain setting or you point in the wrong direction, or not even that SSL certificates, that's like a huge one. Just there's no automation in terms of renewal, and Google keeps on bringing down the renewal rates, and that brought not a red screen to death, like similar. It just caused death on the website and graphics overall. And I think a lot of people don't know that they think they own NFT, but really what they're owning is just code and script that points to files and servers, like you mentioned. But IPFS seems to help solve that. Bitcoin's looking, to do more stuff on chain and whatnot. Does the on chain mechanism help solve that issue at all?
Well, definitely. So, if a person wanted to go full bore on an NFT, they could actually store all this metadata and all the image data on chain. But to store 64K image and maybe 2K of metadata on Ethereum is going to cost you $70,000 in gas probably, or something like that. It might even be larger than the maximum block size. So it's something which is prohibitive. The next best solution is IPFS, where it's on there. Another way to do it would be to store it on XYO, because XYO is similar to IPFS, but it's more data centric as opposed to file centric, as the way IPFS is. So one of the solutions that we're going to be launching next year is a way to repair an NFT, where basically what we do is we go find the data. If we can get the data, we can store that on XYO, so that if you can't find it, it's kind of like a shared public cache. The same way that OpenSea, for example, will have an image from an NFT which is no longer retrievable because either the cert broke, as you said, or it's got a red screen of death, or the site's just down, or no one pinned it to IPFS, so it's gone. And in that case, they still have it in the cache somewhere. So they kind of fix it, but they don't really notify you that it's been fixed. Like I would think that OpenSea should put a little logo in the corner of the image and say, by the way, this image is broken. We still have it for you, just so for reference. But if you're going to buy this NFT, you should know that opening it up in Etherscan or in another viewer is probably not going to work.
Mm-hmm. I don't think we ever addressed this on the podcast. I'm going to attach you with it, Arie, if you can, because I think you understand the history of IPFS maybe better than most. Is this something that's revolutionary or has been around for a long time now? Can you kind of explain that to our audience? Because they're on the earlier stages of the learning curve for Web3.
So IPFS is a different take on Web3, I'd say, than most of the networks out there or the systems out there. It's kind of like XYO, where it's really based on sovereignty, and you hash files. So if I have a file which I store on my IPFS server and I hash it, and you have the same file and you hash it and it comes to the same number, we basically have the same file. So if you have two images, for example, that's bit for bit the exact same, we could end up with the same hash. And then, so if I were to say, well, I don't have this hash, but someone told me go look this hash, I can go to ask other people's servers, well, do you have this hash? And if they have that hash, they can give it to me. So it's kind of similar to torrents, where torrent has all these different pieces of these files, and they're shared and they're distributed across there. And I'm not really sure what IPFS's long-term goal is to be able to, they're like their tokenomics or what they want to do with that. I think there's Filecoin out there, which is kind of a similar system that does that as well. But the idea of it is that you have decentralized storage that goes on. One of the problems with IPFS is that you have to pin stuff. So if I care about a certain image, making sure that it doesn't get forgotten, I have to pin it to my server, because if my image gets deprioritized by everybody because they have limited space on each of those IPFS servers. So if everybody decides that, well, I'm going to take this image out of my cache because no one's asked for it for a year, eventually it's possible that your image is not existing anymore on any one server at all. So the solution for that for most people is, we'll set up your own IPFS server or get a hosted version from Infura or something like that, put your images on there and pin them. And then when you pin them, that means that they won't get taken off that server. But now basically you have only one server that's pinning them. This will get distributed to the other servers, kind of like a cache. So it works very similar to DNS, if a person's familiar with DNS, where you have the start of authority for a DNS thing, which is kind of like your pinned server, and everybody else is really just a cache. But if you change something on your start of authority, the caches take a while for it to work through there, and then it might take up to a day for that to propagate out there. So the model is very similar to DNS, and DNS also is a similar sovereign way of having naming on the internet. So I'm a big fan of DNS as well. Obviously, you have ICANN and then those controls over the structures of it, but still, it's a similar sort of a structure there. So that's how IPFS works. And so it's the next best thing to storing data rather than just putting it on a S3 bucket in AWS and having it potentially go away when you haven't paid your bill or not renewed your cert.
Yeah, you brought up nightmares when you mentioned DNS. That is a blessing and a curse for corporate America here, especially in Silicon Valley. I dealt with a lot of Fortune 500 companies where they didn't know how to protect their DNS. It's a very big issue, and it still happens today. Google got hijacked by a lot of big firms are vulnerable through DNS, so that's a very big issue. And imagine that might creep into the NFT world one day when if it gets big enough, or if there's a fit for a cause for some of these people to take control, they would do that, huh? And they could actually, I think that might have. I'm not sure if that's happened. This actually happened one time, I think, in the NFT world where they changed the imaging. I forgot if you don't remember, Brian. There was a project that changed the image, and and all the holders were like, "What is going on? Why is all my pictures completely different?"
All right, dumb this down a little bit for me. A lot of acronyms, a lot of numbers, a lot of token call outs. I'm definitely following you, but I just want to make sure that our audience fully understands the tool and how it works. Can you give me just some ideas of a real world use cases? Why would I'm a big NFT collector. A lot of people in our audience are. Why would we come to the site? What are the advantages of coming to the site, and what can we really get benefits from?
Well, the site tells you different things than things like OpenSea does. They're obviously conflicted because they're trying to sell these things and they're trying to be an exchange. We don't have that interest at all. So one thing which we don't do is we don't delist tokens. We found with a lot of tokens, if I look at someone's wallet, and one of the ways I kind of test it is I go to a large wallet on Etherscan and just look at some random wallet out there and see what they have. Well, probably on most wallets, we see about 30% of the tokens on there are have some sort of problem with their data, whether it's the metadata or the image. It could be even if it's on IPFS, sometimes the URL they put into the Solidity code is IPFS proxy as opposed to an actual IPFS link. So it'll be https://infura, whatever it is. And some of those, I think it was something like IPFS.io, for example. And if that service goes down, well, now your IPFS link isn't even an IPFS link anymore. It's really just a HTTPS link, thinking it's an IPFS link. So we see that. But about a third of all the items we see are broken in some sort of way that way. Probably about 50% of the items we see in most wallets, most larger wallets we see out there, are ones you can't even see on OpenSea anymore. So if a person goes to OpenSea and says, "Hey, here's my wallet," thinking that this is the entire inventory of their wallet, it's just not true, because OpenSea has decided that they have problems with certain ones, and some of them, legitimately so. They might be scams, or they might be airdrops, or that you don't really want. But we rather take the approach where we'll show you those, and if we can, we'll mark them appropriately, and we'll mark them. This one's data is broken, or this one's data is, this is a scam, a known scam from whatever it is. But we don't want to make that decision for you that you can't see what's in your own wallet. So that's the other problem that a person can see in that solution there. And then the last one is the top tier ones that are out there. You can see how yours ranks to the other tokens in that same collection. So, for example, the rarity versus other ones, and even just the brokenness. We found some collections where, for example, a person had all their HTTPS images working for all their NFTs, except for they must have tried to update one of them in S3, but didn't set the permissions correctly on that new file they uploaded. So there's one NFT out of a collection which has a error when you try to get the image, but the rest of them work. So it's not like their entire system or their DNS didn't get renewed or their HTTPS didn't get renewed. They somehow broke one of their images, only one of their images. And so finding out, well, do I have that NFT that's broken out of this collection? Obviously, large collections like Bored Apes doesn't have this problem because they're minding their business there and getting it done. But a lot of the smaller NFTs, especially ones where funding has gone away or the interest has waned, somebody has to pay the bills for the back end of it. And unless you use IPFS, but even if you use IPFS, you have to pay for the pinning.
Yeah, that's interesting. So part of the advantage of the tool is definitely be able to like almost verify some of these NFTs in your collections, because a lot of the time I'll get like airdrop something or receive an NFT and I have no idea. It goes in my hidden folder in OpenSea and I'm not sure if it's a scam. I'm not sure if I should get rid of it, cancel it, delete it, sell it, list it. I'm scared to interact with it. So your tool will actually be able to identify like a deeper level within that collection.
Well, first and foremost, it provides transparency. So I think just hiding things arbitrarily is not the solution. Providing transparency into the fact that you have it. And then one of the things which we haven't built yet, which we thought about, is we can go and witness whether or not this is on OpenSea and then put a little logo there for you and say, well, OpenSea has banned this thing for some reason. So if they think it's a scam, but we shouldn't hide the thing from you. We should just notify you that OpenSea doesn't actually carry this. Or potentially OpenSea's hidden it, but a different exchange hasn't hidden it. Whatever the case is. So I'm a dataist from a philosophical standpoint. So the more data, the better. I think security through transparency is a lot better than security through obfuscation. And a lot of people feel that having Big Brother, whether it's OpenSea or the government or anybody, having them go and edit my data for me so I don't hurt myself, to me seems to be very slippery slope that I don't want to go down.
Yeah, I see that you have different rating categories, and I know you mentioned maybe you can showcase us on a screen share how that works. Because I look at my wallet that I inputted, and I think it's very early beta stages, and everything looks great so far. But what I personally would like to see how this tool advances and can help me out, protect my assets and make better analysis on what to do, because it's largely it's becoming a larger part of my portfolio, to be honest, as we move forward with Web3, and I'm excited about that.
Yeah, we're definitely still working on the ranking systems. Right now, generally speaking, if you look through a collection, the bottom third is going to be sub 5.0 ratings, and the top third is going to be north of 8 probably. One thing which we don't really reflect very well in there is we don't grade aggressively against each other. So, for example, we didn't want to say, well, on Bored Apes, the worst Bored Ape gets a 1 and the best Bored Ape gets a 10.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't want to say that because now you think that your Bored Ape is a 1, but so it's kind of like the question of how does it score relative to other Bored Apes and how does it score relative to other NFTs is two different questions, and you have to kind of weight those. And so working on a system where looking at my NFTs versus all NFTs at large is kind of a different scoring system than comparing them to other NFTs in their own collection. So really making the UI so it's clear which one of those two modes am I in right now is something which we're trying to design to be as intuitive as possible.
Yeah, I see that there's different categories: empirical, temporal, and subjective, and those are of interest to me, and I can't wait for those to really be built out.
One of the things which we don't have in there is we show you kind of in the image itself. If you I don't know if you have any on your wallet where it says like broken image, for example. If you have a yellow broken image on any of them, that's the way you can. We won't add that to the score just yet, but that's how you can tell that image for some reason there's something wrong with it. And if you click on the little broken image, if you click on the XYO logo on there, when you hover over it, it'll tell you what went wrong, like whether it's a
Gotcha.
a bad request, or if it's a DNS problem, or the server didn't connect, or whatever's happening there. So those are probably the worst ones for you, is the broken image ones where like something's gone wrong there. On the bottom, sometimes you'll see also ones that say image error. The image error ones usually mean that it'll say like missing metadata. That means that the attempt for us to retrieve the metadata failed, and we couldn't actually get those. And so kind of like, that's step one. Step two is actually getting the image. So it's even worse if you can't get the metadata at all.
Hey, Arie, do you want to do a screen share? Just, I'm curious how user-friendly this is for some of our audience who's new to NFTs and obviously new to your platform. If you have those capabilities, we'd love to get up. There he goes.
There we go. So this is a wallet, which is a random person's wallet from Etherscan, a person who owns at least one Bored Ape. And I went to their wallet and grabbed stuff there. So you can see, these top ones here are 9 point something on there. And as you scroll down, it gets a little bit lower. But the ones that are interesting, you can see the attributes and the details on these. Like that one, for example, has no attributes at all. So it gets dinged on the attributes, and it has no external URL on it. So that's what those get dinged for. But here, this is an example of a broken image. And they have different reasons for broken images. So if you click on the XYO logo, it'll show you like where the image is according to the smart contract. It says, well, this is the location of the image. But when we tried to retrieve it, we got a bad request from the server, and so that's why it didn't work. So what a person can do is they can grab this thing and put it into their browser and see if they try and load it themselves, what happens. And generally speaking, if you just paste that into your browser, you're gonna get the same error that we did. See if there's any other ones here. These are probably all the same because all these RIM US error, whatever those are probably having the same problem because their server has that issue.
Interesting.
And then like these have lower scores here because the image variance. So all of them have the same image. So that's probably, so we said, well, if every NFT in this same thing has the exact same image, that's not very interesting. So we said, the image variance is pretty poor there. It has no attributes at all. So empty attributes. So that's why that one got dinged on here. So the image variance is very poor, and there's no attributes whatsoever. And there's no description in the metadata that comes with it, which means that that's why there's no text in here. Most of these up here, as you can see, have little text up there, like this collection. So this is the description that comes from the metadata, which most NFTs have. So if they don't have a description, that's kind of strange. And then going further down here, let me close this guy. You can see these here where it says missing metadata. So these guys have the problem where they don't have metadata coming back from them. So this is an ERC 721, but when we called it, we could not get, we could either not get that from the smart contract, but more likely when we try to get that metadata from a server, it also failed. We'll probably change this error message to have a little more details, kind of like the image one here, where it'll tell you the exact reason why the load of the metadata failed as well. And then, so if we can't get the metadata, obviously we can't get the image because the image is specified in the metadata that's there as well. So those are probably the two big categories of technically broken images. Something also I tend to do is I'll go in here and I'll hit OpenSea, for example, and then that one's on OpenSea, but then go on to this guy here, which is a broken image, and you go to OpenSea, and OpenSea has the image there, correct? But if I go to this image here and grab this guy, get that error, which is it looks like that's what I was talking about before, where they changed the permissions in S3 or something like that for this one because they updated this file. So this file specifically for that NFT is now broken, but OpenSea still has it because they cached it. So they got it some time ago when it was working, but now it's no longer working. But if you go to OpenSea and like, hey, I want to buy this guy here, you're thinking this is a fully functional NFT on OpenSea, but it's not. It's actually broken.
Yeah, it looks like someone's still offering $140 for it. It's not even working.
Yeah. Okay, just so I fully understand. So OpenSea is essentially using an image that's outdated,
stored data. It's like stored in their local like internet provider type of thing, so that when you retrieve it doesn't take as long.
Wow, I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah. Well, for performance reasons, you have to cache those images, right? Because you can't just load the image from IPFS every single time, or from the HTTPS, wherever you're getting it from every single time. So you put it in the local S3 or local cache, but they don't seem to expire that cache at all. So if this could have been a year ago when this image was taken and put into their S3 locally, and so as far as they're concerned, it still works, but they didn't verify that is it still there. All they did was it was there at one point when we went to look at it originally. Etherscan actually does the opposite, which is kind of funny. I've seen that on there where they will have a broken image because of when they try to get it, it was broken, and then it got fixed, and then they never went and checked it again, and so it stays broken forever. So Etherscan is aggressive in the opposite direction, where they don't retry failures, and OpenSea does the opposite. They don't retry successes.
Interesting.
So Arie, I know this is getting released soon. I know you said it's in the beta version, but I think it's going to be released to the public very soon. Correct?
Well, it's a person can go up there right now and use it. It's available on our website. It's just we haven't released it from the standpoint it's very beta still, because we're trying to figure out what are the right things people want to have in there as far as the scores and those sorts of things go. So like technologically it works really well, but is it the solution that people are looking for? So what we want to do is have people go out there, try it. They can go to the search and just paste in their wallet address here or a contract. So if you have the contract for Bored Apes, whatever it is, or your wallet address, you can paste it in there and hit search. We'll go ahead and analyze it. If we haven't analyzed it yet, it will take some time for it to go analyze it and load all the images. And once it's done, it will show you those results. And if people find ones where they're like, well, I disagree with this score because we did something wrong, then we can go ahead and research that to see if we're missing something or we did something wrong there. Or say, for example, if it's now fixed, but we haven't successfully reflected the fact that it's fixed, we can go and change our system to go and recheck it. But what will happen for most people is if you go, for example, into our system here, if you have a broken one, you can always hit refresh. So say, for example, if well, is this one still here? If I hit refresh here, it will try and get it again. And if it's currently broken, it'll switch to a broken image. So you can basically retry successes and retry failures on our system manually by just hitting the little refresh button here. We're going to be adding a similar button for the metadata where it's like, well, if the metadata broke since last time, you can go and refresh it and it'll be in that state for you there. Since we keep all this also on our blockchain, a thing which we'll be able to add on there is the history of all these polls. So you can be like, oh, for this period of time, the image worked, and then here's 2 weeks it didn't work, and then here's 6 weeks it did work. So we can even show you a graph of like an uptime graph for an NFT, as long as somebody went and polled them for those periods.
Yeah. All right. Can you click on the how we rate section really quickly? Because I think I'm super excited about, because I think what you got down is the empirical categories, and the temporal and subjective is something I'm really interested in, because I have a lot of NFTs with a lot of quote unquote utilities, but I'm interested to see how dynamically that could affect the score of your rating system. So I think that's super exciting. So on the heels of that, is there any NFTs or Web3 applications of NFTs that, or even idealistic ones that you might be excited about?
Well, so one of the interesting things about utility of NFTs is you have sovereign utility and you have non-sovereign utility, right? So if a person says, well, you own a Bored Ape and you can get into the Bored Ape Club in Las Vegas, well, what happens to the Bored Ape Club in Las Vegas? Goes out of business. You can no longer get into it, right? So it's not really sovereign. Or if the bouncer doesn't believe you that you have a Bored Ape or whatever it is, he's not going to let you go in. So that's kind of it's a non-sovereign utility because it's still subject to somebody else's authority on whether or not you can get that benefit. A utility where it's sovereign is if I have this NFT, I can now interact, for example, with a smart contract on Ethereum. The smart contract's going to be judging that, and it's something which no one can take away from me as long as I have that NFT. But if I lose that NFT, then it goes away. Or if it's, for example, is attached to a digital document of some sort where it says, well, my 1/100th ownership in a house, for example, is inscribed in the smart contract. That's something which is much more objective. So I think differentiating between sovereign and non-sovereign utility for NFTs is something that's important for people to do. The non-sovereign ones are difficult because there's no way for us to even really get a easy list of that. There's no meta structure that is used that's generic across all NFTs that says, well, here's our enumeration of the benefits you get with this NFT, because people want to be able to change it ad hoc, which is one of the problems with those non-sovereign things, because besides whether or not they let you into the Bored Ape Club, they can add or remove benefits whenever they want to.
Right. Yeah, definitely. The non-sovereign ones are definitely, I've seen really bad cases of that where Coachella, they were on FTX, and you're supposed to get lifetime benefits, but they got like locked up in bankruptcy. So the utility there, to your point, is basically non-existence anymore. And one that I think is pretty, I'm pretty bullish on, or I'm excited about, is dynamic NFTs. I'm not sure if that fits into the sovereign category that you mentioned, but people did a case where he had sort of like a dynamic NFT, like an artwork in a museum, and for visitors there, it was able to change through an oracle of sorts. So that's something I'm excited about, and hopefully it fits in that sovereign category. And I would like to see that a little bit more.
Yeah, I think in many of those cases, it comes down to how it's implemented, right? I think you can make dynamic NFTs that are non-sovereign, and you can make dynamic NFTs that are sovereign. And we haven't gone really down that rabbit hole yet with this tool as far as, well, how do you determine the sovereignty of the data that's coming from the dynamic NFT? If it's coming from a video camera somewhere, and the video camera gets bumped or moved or whatever it is, and you can no longer see the updates that's being made to the piece of art that's in the museum, that's got some sovereignty problems. Where if that artwork is a digital piece of artwork where it just is, there's a screenshot, for example, on a domain, and as that changes, it's literally retrievable without any sort of thing. It becomes much more sovereign. And so the question of how sovereign is something, and I don't think we're not unreasonable from the standpoint that we know that the practicality of achieving full sovereignty is something which is not that possible from a cost standpoint. Like I was saying before to you guys, that if you store the images and all the metadata and everything inside of your smart contract, that's the most sovereign approach to NFTs. But it's also going to cost you tens of thousands of dollars to actually mint the NFT in gas. So finding either layer twos, finding things like XYO or IPFS as a way to store those makes them much more sovereign. But there's also a difference between data permanence from the standpoint that you can't change it, really immutability, and data permanence from the standpoint you can't lose that data. And so NFTs have both of those problems sometimes, right? In some cases, like take the IPFS example, I can't change what the image is because the hash has to match. So it's completely immutable. So that gives you some good sovereignty. The image can still be lost from the standpoint of no one pinned it. I can't retrieve the image, but it can't be changed. Now, if the image is on an HTTPS server with no hash, I can just go and change the image to whatever it is. I can make something offensive that's on there, and suddenly your NFT's got some politically charged thing on it, and how did that happen? So the difference between the inability to lose something and the inability to change something is something that's very important for people to think about for NFTs. And I think it's having something which is immutable but losable is way better than having something that's both mutable and losable.
Nice. I know you said when you were going through the presentation here that the community can provide feedback. How do they go about doing that?
Well, the easiest way to do it is just to email our support, and you can do it there. People also tweet at me on Twitter, so I'm easy to find on Twitter. It's just I'm Arie Trouw on there. I have a fortunate, fairly unique name, so it's easy to find me in the world. It's hard to hide, I suppose. But so tweet me at me on Twitter is one of the best ways to do it. Or we have a Discord as well. So if you go to our Discord channel on there, there's conversations about things. So you can put bug reports there. Also, if you use GitHub, for example, you can make an open image in GitHub in one of our public repositories, our open source repositories there. So there's a variety of ways for you to be able to get that feedback to us. We'll probably be adding a feedback button on our website fairly soon to have a way for a person to just message us on there.
Are our customers are going to this website right here that we're looking at? Or are they going to XYO first and then linking? What's the best way to get to the tool?
Oh, they can just go to this website. So if you go to Foreventory, which is the root of our public dApps, basically for that XY Labs creates for XYO. We have two things in here. We have a Netflix tool where basically you can download your data from Netflix, and then it will give you reports on there. And it's
nice.
A way to reclaim your data from Netflix. And then we have this Rate My NFTs on here. So if you go here and you click on Rate My NFTs, it'll take you to this page where you can start off there. So either put in your contract address or your wallet address that you want to look at, or just if you hit the top NFT collections, it will show you these are this is an arbitrary list that we compiled from the internet. And we grabbed a few different top lists out there and just pop them in here. But you can see this one here, for example, is one that's fairly popular, but it's got some issues as far as some of their loading goes. They have broken images. So I think this is a top NFT that has died. Let's see if OpenSea, OpenSea still seems to have them, but
oh yeah, there it is.
So it's kind of interesting to see, and maybe they're just down temporarily. I'm not sure, but it's always kind of interesting in there. And then if you want to search in here, you can be like, putting.
I'm going to personally spend a couple hours today putting in all my random wallets to see what's happening with some of my NFTs. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. So yeah, so it's definitely, I can spend a lot of time going through here, and I'm just like, oh, that's interesting. And honestly, some of the things I'll learn about NFTs where like a person used some strange shape of metadata that I was unaware is supported by people, because there's no like universal spec for the metadata, unfortunately. And so for us to know like what's the metadata that they should have, I think most people have conformed to what OpenSea has published as their metadata structure, but there is no spec for 721s or for 1155s that have a shape for the metadata that's provided. And so, some people will use, instead of image, they'll use like say image underscore card, and now we can't find the image. And one of the tough questions for us is, what should we expect? Like if a person doesn't conform to any sort of a standard whatsoever, if they just put in Arie image, for example, as the image, it's like at some point like that should get dinged because you've completely decided to not go along with the flow and expose your images in a way that people can find them.
Very cool. Yeah, the tool looks very interesting. There's not many tools, if any, out there like this, and I'm definitely personally interested to kind of see what my wallets hold. Like I said earlier, I guess my last question for you. I know this is a new tool and you're kind of building it out. Are there any new like updates you're really excited for, or anything coming down the pipeline here?
Well, I think the thing I'm most excited about is our Builder Bounty program that we're going to be launching in January or Q1, where people can more easily create their own additions to our tools and make their own tools with our technology. And so it's kind of being able to make dApps without writing Solidity. You can make dApps using a data-centric approach, which is how XYO works. Basically, you code. It's kind of somewhere in the if this then that Zapier sort of a way if you do the very high level data-centric approach to it. And so for people to be able to augment tools, or even a person can take this and they can say, okay, well, if I go to this data here, you can see the hash. Actually, what I'll display it here. But you can get the hash for this specific token, and then if they want to, they can make their own renderer for that. So they can call XYO, get that data from XYO, and they can make an advanced renderer for NFTs if they want to from the data that we've collected from our witnesses. So seeing what people are going to be able to make, whether it's a ground up solution or augmentations and say advanced viewers for our data, or even additional storage devices where we have an in-memory or the IndexedDB and MongoDB archivists right now, but people could make other archivists as well. So I'm really excited to see what people are going to make with that. And then as we continue to add functionality to these NFTs or the NFT ratings, just what we learn about what's not sovereign out there. And to a large degree, my personal quest is that it's to expose the erosion of sovereignty on the internet that people have experienced over the last decade or more. I'm one of those older internet users. I remember when the internet came around, which you guys are probably both too young to remember. So the internet was a lot different 20 years ago. There was a lot more excitement about discovering things and finding things. And now it's spoon-fed to everybody. It's almost like a really bad video game with good graphics. And so I'd rather play the original Zelda with bad graphics and great game design than a modern, game that's got amazing graphics that's completely boring. And I feel like the internet's really moved towards that largely because of that erosion of sovereignty and understanding what's going on there. And so poking holes into that and saying, well, this is the truth of what's going on there is interesting to me. And so finding other places besides NFTs to go and explore that philosophy is something I'm very excited about.
Yeah, very cool. It's a very cool website. I'm excited to dig deep, like I said. Just for all the listeners out there, we'll absolutely post the link to the tool and the website, and obviously we'll connect Arie's Twitter so you could drive him crazy and hammer him with all your questions and concerns. Arie, we really appreciate you joining us today. Really good stuff. Excited to see how the tool develops further. Hopefully we'll have you on in the future as the tool develops and, becomes kind of a tool every NFT collector's using every day.
Thank you very much for having me on.
All right. Thanks everyone for joining Real Talk NFT, and we'll talk to you soon.